One day, I noticed a shift in my husband's mood after he exchanged a few words with my mother-in-law. Without warning, he turned cold, his demeanor darkening. Before I could even process what was happening, he grabbed my hair and shoved me. I stumbled back, completely taken aback, my heart racing with fear. In a panic, I called the police, praying for intervention, but when they arrived, the officer was an old friend of David's. He dismissed my distress with a wave, claiming there was no clear evidence of anything happening. Helpless and shaken, I realized I was alone in dealing with this. I had to figure out how to protect myself and my daughter. I'll never forget the first day I brought my daughter, Lily, home from the hospital. It should have been a joyous occasion, but instead, I was overwhelmed by exhaustion. I'm Isabella, 30 years old, adjusting to life as a new mom. The first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, juggling the demands of a newborn, and a house that seemed to spiral further out of control with every passing day. Our home in Austin was often messy, with piles of laundry and a kitchen that always felt a step away from chaos. David worked long hours, and I was left to handle everything on my own, struggling to keep up. One afternoon, as I tried to soothe Lily, the doorbell rang. Embarrassment hit me like a wave. The house was a mess, and I hadn't had the energy to tidy up. When I opened the door, there stood Margaret, my mother-in-law. Without a word, she entered and immediately began commenting on everything around her. "Well, I see not much has changed since my last visit," Margaret remarked, her tone thick with judgment. I forced a smile. "Hi, Margaret. I'm just a bit overwhelmed right now." She surveyed the house, eyes scanning every corner. "Overwhelmed? It looks like you've given up. Is this how you plan to raise my granddaughter?" Her words stung deep, but I kept my cool. "I'm doing the best I can. It's just been a lot." Margaret walked into the kitchen, clearly unimpressed by the state of things. "This place is a disaster. How do you expect to manage if you can't even keep the house in order?" The shame was suffocating. David was never home, and I was trying my hardest to manage on my own. When David walked in and saw his mom, his face lit up. "Mom, what a surprise! I didn't know you were coming." Margaret wasted no time pointing out the mess. "David, look at this. Your wife can't even keep the house clean. It's like she's given up." David scanned the room, his expression changing. "Isabella, we need to talk. Things are tough, but you've got to do better." My stomach twisted. "David, I'm trying. It's not easy." Margaret chimed in, her voice cutting through the tension. "Being a mother is about more than just caring for the baby. You have to manage everything, including the house." David stood there, torn between his mom and me. "Mom, maybe we should help her understand." Margaret's voice grew sharper. "She needs more discipline. She's not meeting our family standards." The air in the room felt thick with tension, and David's gaze turned cold, his frustration palpable. "Sophie, you need to get it together. This isn't okay." Before I could respond, Margaret leaned in and whispered something to David. His expression shifted instantly, and he turned to me, his face unreadable. "Maybe you're right," he said, his words cold. "Maybe you need to learn the hard way." In an instant, his behavior shifted, and the situation escalated. Lily began crying, the sound only making the tension worse. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking as I called the police. When they arrived, my heart sank as I realized the officer was an old friend of David's. He barely acknowledged my distress, brushing it off with the excuse that there wasn't enough evidence to take action. I don't understand. He hurt me. Can't you do something?" I pleaded. The officer shook his head. "Without evidence, there's nothing I can do. Maybe next time, try to get more proof." He left, and I was left feeling utterly alone. David stood by, distant and indifferent, while Margaret remained close by his side. I felt utterly betrayed. As the officer walked out the door, I sank to the floor, holding Lily tightly in my arms. What should have been my sanctuary felt like a prison. The pain from the shove didn't compare to the deep emotional wound I was carrying in that moment. I realized that my life had become unbearable. I needed a change, but the way forward seemed daunting. David's behavior, particularly under Margaret's influence, had crossed a line. I knew I needed to find a way out, not just for me, but for my daughter too. And in that quiet moment of despair, I made a promise to myself. I would find a way to reclaim my life. I promised myself that I would find a way to escape this nightmare and create a safe, happy life for Lily and me. This was just the beginning of a journey that would test me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The days after the attack were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. I was shaken, but the physical pain from David's violence was overshadowed by a stronger feeling, determination. I knew I had to get out, to protect Lily and escape the suffocating, toxic environment that David and Margaret had created. But how? It wasn't until a few days later that I found hope. Rachel, a close college friend, had always been someone I could count on. I hesitated to reach out, not wanting to burden her, but desperation drove me to pick up the phone. "Rachel, it's Isabella. I really need your help," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Things have gotten bad. David hit me, the police didn't do anything, and I can't stay here anymore." Rachel's voice immediately softened with concern. "Oh, Isabella, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'm an investigator now. I can help. Let's meet, and we'll figure out what you need to do." We met at a coffee shop. As soon as I walked in, I spotted Rachel. She was sitting at a corner table, calm as always, and I felt a rush of relief, though my nerves were still on edge. I sat down across from her, my hands shaking as I clasped them together. "So, what's the plan?" Rachel asked, her tone focused yet gentle. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "I need to leave David, but I need proof of what's going on. I need evidence that his behavior is abusive, and that Margaret's manipulation is playing a big part in it." Rachel nodded, her eyes steady. "We'll need to document everything. Do you have any recordings or messages that show what's been happening?" I shook my head. "No, but I'll do whatever it takes." Rachel gave me a sympathetic smile. "Okay, we'll start gathering evidence. We need to document every interaction with David and Margaret. If you can, try to record any incidents of abuse or manipulation in the coming weeks." From that moment, Rachel became my guide and ally. She taught me how to use a hidden app on my phone to record conversations without raising suspicion. I started tracking everything: phone calls, text messages, and every interaction with David and Margaret. I had to be careful, they were watching me closely, and the smallest misstep could tip them off. One afternoon, when David was at work, Margaret called. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello?" I said, forcing calm into my tone. "Isabella." Margaret's voice oozed with condescension. "David says you've been causing trouble. I've been patient, but it's clear you need to be reminded of your place." I recorded the entire conversation, her manipulative tone clear in the audio. Every word she said, every twisted sentiment, was now documented. Rachel and I didn't stop there. We made a plan. We figured out how I could leave when David was at work, so he wouldn't be able to stop me. Rachel had already secured a safe place for Lily and me to go once we left. The night before we were to leave, I lay in bed, my mind racing. I was terrified, but there was something stronger, a deep resolve. Leaving wasn't just about escaping David's abuse. It was about freeing myself and Lily from Margaret's iron grip over our lives. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to do it for her. The day arrived, and my stomach was a tangle of fear and excitement. David was supposed to be at work, and Rachel was on her way to help me. I spent the morning quietly packing essentials, focusing on staying calm and in control. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "I'm outside. Are you ready?" My heart pounded in my chest as I grabbed Lily and our things. I took one last look at the house that had once felt like home. Now it was just a symbol of the chaos and control that had dominated our lives. With a steadying breath, I locked the door behind me. Rachel and I quickly loaded up the car and drove away. The ride was silent, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of hope. This was the start of something new, though the road ahead was uncertain. When we arrived at Rachel's house, exhaustion hit me all at once. We unloaded our things and settled in, and Rachel reassured me that this was just the first step. In the days that followed, Rachel and I worked tirelessly to gather more evidence. We knew that exposing David and Margaret's abuse was the key to everything. I was more determined than ever to push through, no matter how difficult it became. Rachel's support, paired with her skills as an investigator, were invaluable during this time. Together, we began building a solid case against David and Margaret, knowing that detailed, irrefutable evidence would be crucial. We also reached out to anyone who might have witnessed the abuse or control, family members, friends, even neighbors who might have seen or heard something. One of David's cousins had always been close with him, and Rachel suggested I speak to them, hoping they might help us. David's cousin, who had always been kind to me, agreed to speak up. She wrote a statement about her observations of David's aggression and Margaret's interference in our marriage. With the evidence we had collected, Rachel and I began organizing everything. We knew that simply having the evidence wasn't enough. We needed to present it in a clear and convincing way. We categorized each piece: the abuse incidents, Margaret's manipulation, and David's erratic behavior. Rachel helped me prepare a detailed report, including timestamps and context for the recordings. It was a massive task, but it was necessary to ensure our case was strong. A few days later, Rachel and I met with a lawyer who specialized in domestic abuse cases. She carefully reviewed our evidence and gave us invaluable advice. "You've got a solid case," she said, flipping through the documents and listening to the recordings. "But we need to make sure everything is presented clearly. I can help you file a restraining order and press charges." Her words filled me with a sense of hope. Knowing we had legal support behind us was a huge relief. We worked with her to prepare the necessary paperwork and made sure our evidence was properly organized. The day of the court hearing arrived, and my nerves were on edge. Rachel and I walked into the courthouse, each step feeling heavy with the weight of all we'd been through. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel the pressure mounting, but Rachel stayed by my side, offering words of support and encouragement as we waited. When it was time to present our case, a mixture of adrenaline and fear coursed through me. The evidence was overwhelming, and Rachel guided me through the entire process. We played the recordings, presented the documents, and shared testimonies from David's cousin and other witnesses. The courtroom fell silent as the evidence unfolded. I saw the judge's reactions as he listened to the recordings and reviewed the material. It was a nerve-wracking experience, but I knew this was the culmination of all our hard work. As the hearing ended, we anxiously awaited the judge's decision. The days that followed were filled with tension, but I held on to the hope that the evidence would be enough to secure a positive outcome. Then, finally, the moment came. The judge ruled in our favor. David and Margaret would face legal consequences for their actions. It was a monumental victory, but I knew there was still much to do. Rachel and I focused on finalizing our plans, securing a new apartment, and continuing to rebuild my life. The legal victory was just one step on this long and difficult journey. With the support of Rachel and the legal system, I felt a newfound sense of hope and determination. Looking back, I realized the fight for justice had changed me. It had tested my strength, resilience, and resolve. But with each step, I became more confident in my ability to face the challenges that had once seemed impossible. Once the court ruling was in our favor, Rachel and I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Our hard work had paid off, But the final step, ensuring that David and Margaret faced true accountability, was still ahead. It was time to bring the authorities in and make sure justice was fully served. We worked closely with our lawyer to coordinate with the police. We handed over the full set of evidence, including recordings, text messages, and witness statements. Rachel's expertise and my personal accounts made our case even stronger. The day of the arrest, I was a bundle of nerves. David and Margaret still had no idea what was coming, and I couldn't shake the unease. Rachel stayed close, helping me stay focused and calm. The police arrived at their house in the afternoon, and I watched from a distance, my heart pounding. Rachel had told me to stay out of sight for my safety and to avoid any direct confrontation. The wait was excruciating. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Rachel received a call from one of the officers. David and Margaret had been arrested. The news was almost too much to process. The long, painful journey had finally reached its conclusion, and the people who had tormented me were now facing the consequences of their actions. As the sun set over Austin that evening, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. This wasn't just about the legal win. It was about reclaiming my life, my safety, and my right to be treated with respect. With David and Margaret facing charges, I could finally begin to think about the future, without the shadow of their abuse hanging over me. In the days following the arrest, I focused on settling into my new apartment with Lily. The move was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but it also marked the start of something new. I carefully arranged our new home to make it peaceful and nurturing, a place where we could heal and begin again. Rachel remained my steadfast support, helping me navigate the challenges of my new life. Her unwavering presence was a reminder of the strength that had carried me through everything. The legal process continued, and I kept track of the proceedings. David and Margaret's court dates were set, and I was ready to testify if necessary. The legal system would hold them accountable, and I was determined to see it through. Looking back, I realized how crucial Rachel's support had been, along with the role the legal system played in helping me break free from the cycle of abuse. It reminded me of the power of resilience, courage, and the importance of reaching out for help when needed. When David and Margaret were officially charged, it was a bittersweet moment. Seeing justice served was satisfying, but I knew the emotional scars would stay with me for a long time. Still, their legal consequences were a crucial step in ensuring they couldn't harm anyone else. As I settled into my new life, I reflected on the strength it took to confront and overcome such a painful situation. The help I received from friends, the legal victories, and my own determination had been essential in rebuilding my life. Now, I was in a place where I could focus on creating a loving, positive home for Lily, free from the abuse and manipulation I had endured. In the end, my journey became a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of standing up against abuse. Each day, I grew stronger and more confident in my ability to face the future, with hope leading the way.